Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
So, to preface the story, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a backstory just to kind of get an understanding of what stuff was like before this happened. When I was a kid in our farmhouse, I would always have something going on. Not to say the house was creepy, but it definitely had some weird things going on. So, besides the usual shadows and creepy things you'd see in the hallways or feel, there would be sets of red eyes that would be stacked up outside my bedroom window. I'd have dolls at the top of my closet, and their heads would randomly start moving. I would talk to imaginary friends that I'm pretty sure were not imaginary friends. But again, what kid doesn't do that? So, for me, that little imaginary friend followed me to my apartment shortly after my parents separated when I was a kid, and she was like my protector. She was always with me. I'd see her, I'd hear her wet footsteps kind of sticking on the cold tile when she was barefoot, kind of like that sound, like that shh, shh, shh. I would hear that walking to the foot of my bed or my dad's bed because I was too scared to sleep alone as a kid. So in our apartment, my dad's bedroom is a solarium, and there's a window that attaches to both of our rooms because there's supposed to be a balcony, but they never ended up making it. I see my little girl, my friend, imaginary friend, sitting in the foot of my dad's bed. Dark hair, long, white dress, very sunken eyes. She looks tired. And I look at her and she's like, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you can come. And she's like, no. And she points to my door, and I was like, I look over, I don't say anything, but I'm like, okay, okay. So later that night, I just kind of head to bed as usual, and I don't really pay much mind to it because in this apartment, I've already had my Tickle Me Elmo turn on in my closet randomly when it was off and there's no batteries in it. I've had shadow figures walk by the portals in our hallway because we had two mirrors facing each other. I'd see a younger version of myself that a trickster made and would run across the front hallway. There was a lot of stuff that would always happen. But that night, I woke up wide awake, could not sleep, and I woke up to look, and in front of my door is the bathroom door, so it's right across, and I just see a 7 foot shadow figure standing in my doorway. Now, I panic, obviously, because I am not asleep at this rate and I'm wide awake. I know that I'm seeing this thing in front of me and I don't know what it is. Now I'm starting to panic though because I'm seeing it become closer into my room and walking into my doorway, and he's just kind of standing there. He's not doing anything. He's just starting to get closer, and I start to pull my blanket closer to me because I don't want to be close to him. Now at this rate, he's fully in my room and he stops and he looks at my radio that is by my door. He completely turns his attention to my radio and just kind of stares at it and touches it, kind of points at it. He does something with it, and he's just fascinated by it. At some point, though, shortly after, he now shifts his focus back onto me, which is now hiding about this high in my bed under my blanket, staring at him because I don't want to not pay attention to him. Now, where he stops is about right in front of me, in my bed, at least like 2 steps back, if anything, and he just points. He's standing right there. I can see him. He's pointing, and I just hide under my blanket and I start praying because my family was very religious. And I just start praying, saying God's name out loud, and just hoping, that this man goes away. Now, after a little bit of time, couldn't tell you exactly how long because I was so scared I couldn't really keep track. Eventually, I just waited, and eventually he left. And when he did leave, I looked over to my closet, and there was a purple portal just sitting on the floor. And I don't mean one of those portals from the game. I mean like it was a purple, flat kind of like portal you see in the floor that had spirals and stuff moving in it, and I could see it went down. Don't know where it went to. I just saw it, hid back under the blanket, and then shortly after I ran and I got my dad and I told him because I was scared out of my mind. When I told my dad about it, he did just try to play it off and be like, oh, you were asleep, oh, you didn't see anything. Later to tell me as an adult that he was actually scared and had one of our spiritual friends come check the house to make sure the entity was gone because of his religion being shooken. He didn't like it, so he was quite scared as well. After that night, though, and seeing that entity, I did sleep with my dad because I was just too scared to do anything else. But the next day, when I went in my room, that's when things were weird. So back to the Tickle Me Elmo quickly. I ripped off my closet doors when that happened because I did not like the sounds and the things and the ticking that would come from my closet door as a kid, so I just ripped them off. So I could see inside my closet pretty clearly to know that this portal wasn't just a figment of a light, a toy, or something, and like I could see everything that was going on. So the next day, I go in my room and I look around. I don't see anything. I feel pretty weird, but I just kind of chalk it up to me just still being scared. So again, check my room, check my closet. There was no toys that I had that remotely made a sort of light circular portal in any way that I could have, played with. So I was a pretty interesting kid in the sense of, like I watched a lot of ghost hunting shows, anything paranormal, mystery hunters, but I never knew what a spirit talker was. I've never remembered what a spirit box was. I never knew anything about that. So I only found out I remembered this a little while later when I clicked in the pieces together. When I came back into my room and I went through my closet and everything, I go to turn on my radio and all I hear is static white noise. And I wouldn't have known what this was, like I said. So all I heard was just and it was just static. But then I could hear talking behind it as well. I instantly turned it off. I unplugged it, and I'm pretty sure I threw that thing in the garbage chute within 5 minutes of that being on. Now, for a long time, that was the last time I saw the entity until I was at someone's house and we were talking about how we have similar experiences with the same entity. We go outside. I was going for a smoke, and I see him standing across the street by the trees, just watching and observing. Could I say that I liked him? No, but he definitely was not a harmful spirit. He was definitely an observer and a watcher, but he definitely left a memory for me for sure. Now, could I say this is the only and last experience that I've had? Hell no. I've had so many more other experiences, but this is my really most memorable one that I love to share and kind of show people I'm a little bit more spooky. So, hope you guys have a great day or night whenever you're watching this.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8,
I just had a creepy experience that happened to me that is related to this trend. I've been watching this trend on repeat compilations because I'm fascinated by it. Hearing other people's stories because I've lived in an extremely haunted home when I was a little girl. It actually made me start seeing spirits again, and when you start seeing spirits, you become a magnet to them. Your life becomes haunted. You can't go anywhere without ghosts. They're everywhere, and they will haunt you. Honestly, it feels kind of like a glitch of a matrix because this is oddly a very specific coincidence. I know I said that wrong. I watched a girl while I'm watching these videos. So I had a very similar experience to me, and I'm like, dang, now I want to hop on this trend and say this. Here I am. And then I have this experience. I'm like, the universe wants me to tell this story. So I was 12 years old. I love music. I'm actually producing and singing music right now about me seeing ghosts. And when I was little, I had this really old, like 2000s, maybe even 90s radio that you could put a CD in it, and then you could turn on a radio and listen to music there. I never used the radio because it was in a station that was like super staticky. I think it was Spanish, and I didn't know how to change frequencies to one I know. My uncle would burn discs that I could listen to of songs that I liked, and then plus I bought CDs and that stuff. So I would dance in my room alone for hours listening to this radio. But we were really, really poor, so my parents was super strict on making sure I turned off the radio afterwards. This is important. I hated sleeping in this room. This room was so haunted, and it was nearly impossible to sleep in that room. actually use the radio sometimes to listen to calming music to make sleeps bearable. However, I tried not to because I was very insecure about it. And I don't know why, because now to this day, I listen to music sleeping and I don't give a crap. This night, I was being brave and I was actually able to go into a deep sleep. However, I was awoken in the night by the Amber Alert noise. Full blast going on this radio. I remember, because even listening to this song without this situation, being woken up in the middle of the night, gives me goosebumps. So I remember pressing my head in the pillow and just screaming in terror while this thing goes on for, I think, longer than normal. And it didn't even say who was kidnapped or any detail. It was just playing that noise for no reason. All of a sudden, just static, just and Spanish. Somehow, the radio was cranked up to the max in the middle of the night and switched upward to the radio setting. Even if I left it on the other night, it would be at the bottom. So in the middle of the switch, it was off button. At the bottom was the CD, and at the top was the radio setting. And even if I accidentally went a notch up and put it on the radio, how the heck was it cranked up to the max? Logic isn't logicking. After I left, I booked it. I don't know if I was able to go back to the room and fall asleep again. It was a while ago. And I didn't even know what noise it was until the next day my cousins were over. I'm telling everyone this story. And they were like, was it the Amber Alert sound? And we were actually combining two noises. The purge noise, the purge, like, burr, burr, or the Amber Alert noise. It could have been a combination of that, or, like, one or the other. So, I want to wake up this afternoon, but I went to bed really late, so I'm sleeping in. I actually had alarms going to, like, wake me up, but I kept on clicking snooze and all this stuff. I think I accidentally clicked dismiss and there was an alarm going, but I was woken up today by an Amber Alert. And I had my phone right by my face because I kept on clicking snooze. So it was really loud. And at first I thought it was my alarm, and then I realized it was an Amber Alert, and I was like, oh my gosh, no way this is happening right now. And the creepiest thing about this, I'm getting chills. Maybe I'm not. I feel like I am. The poor little girl that was missing was named Amber. But my phone pronounced it Ambry. Ambry is my name. That is how you say my name, Ambry. So it sounds like Ambry has been stolen. Oh man, I feel sick to my stomach. I have so much other scary stories, but this is the first thing I did today because what the heck? This is so undoubtedly what the heck? So creepy. I'm going to make more stories on this trend because I want to. I have actually scarier stories, but oh my gosh. Pray, be happy, be healthy. Bye.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
I've got several things that would work for this, but there's one incident in particular, and all the incidents leading up to it, that really just have like kind of stuck in my brain. So I guess I'll just share that with you. So it was like 6 years ago, right before and right after my daughter was born. Her dad was not in a good place mentally, and weird things started happening around our house. And it would start with like just knocking, and we had this motion light that we kept on our shelf in our closet, and it would like communicate with us through that. And it carried over to his mom's house, who has since passed. But it was just so weird. She used to watch preaching on the TV, like Andrew Womack and Joel Osteen and them. And there was one sermon that Andrew was preaching in particular, and I had picked something up to go throw it away in their kitchen that day. I watch my feet when I walk because I trip over everything. And so, I'm being extra cautious looking at the ground when I'm walking to the trash can. And I get there and I throw what I had in my hand away. And when I turned around, I'm telling you, there was thousands of just maggots just manifested in the middle of the floor. And like, maggots have to have a food source. And his mom was really good about bleaching the floors, keeping them clean and all that. So those maggots literally appeared out of thin air. I watched it with my own eyes. Same thing happened at our house a couple days later. I was sitting in my living room. I was petting my cat, who was sitting on the floor. And then the second time I looked down, there's just maggots by my feet. And they came from absolutely nowhere. It's like they just like came up out of the floor. It was fucking weird. And then things started to get worse in the house, too. Like, a couple days before the main event, I came home from the grocery store, and when I got to the top of our staircase, the motion light that was in our closet, our bedroom lit up. It was night, so I could see that the bedroom lit up. And as soon as that happened, you heard something fly across the room and hit the ground. Like, it was so loud, and it scared the shit out of me. But then I walk back there, there's nothing on the floor. And I just started, like, smelling weird smells, like, demonic shit. And yeah, it just got really bad. And then came the night that everything happened. Everything that really fucked me up anyway. And I was laying in bed, and my daughter had just been born at that point. So it was her dad, her, and me on the outside. And she just kind of fell asleep eating. I was going to get her up and move her, whatever. But I just had this really heavy, dark feeling overcome me all of a sudden. It was so weird. I felt like something was breathing down my neck, and my heart started racing. And next thing I know, I had, like, I guess you could say it was sleep paralysis, but I don't know. It didn't really feel like that. I was conscious when this happened, but my eyes just, like, blacked. Like, I couldn't see anything, and I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't talk, typical sleep paralysis things. But I was able to, like, cut my eyes towards our closet, and I saw this thing standing in there. And how Freddy Krueger's face is scarred from being burnt and stuff is exactly what this thing looked like. And it had a snake tongue and bright red eyes, and it was saying stuff to me, but it was not in English, it was in Latin, and I did not understand it. But it felt like it was trying to kill me. It was really fucking weird. I don't know what I did to snap myself out of that, but eventually it all just and then it was done. Like, it just stopped happening. And after that, he went fucking postal. This dude was off his fucking rocker, my daughter's dad. He just went absolutely fucking nuts. He was being awful to me. He was just being awful in general. Like, it was like he was fucking possessed. And the crazy part is, all that stopped once I left that situation. But to this day, I still have, like, nightmares about what I saw. And it was just really, really fucking weird.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely.
Alright, so my story is kind of like chopped up in a timeline of like different things that happened, but some of them were related. So the earliest memory that I have, the earliest paranormal memory that I have is of me living in the first house where my mom and my dad and me and my sister all lived together as a family before they got divorced, right? They got divorced when I was 4. So I'm assuming when this happened, I was like 3 or 4 years old. But I remember being in my bedroom, laying in my bed, and our room was pitch dark, and I could see 2 shadow silhouettes walking past me. Sorry, I get the creeps when I talk about it. So the first one, like his hands was like this, shaped like this, and it was like, ugh, I hate even doing that shit, but like creeping across the room. And it had like, was holding a bag, which like as a child I assumed was like a money bag, like a bag of money. Like still to this day, that's how I remember it. Like it was all black. It was nothing, like a complete black shadow, no face. Like this is just literally a silhouette, but it was like a bag that it was carrying, and I assumed it was a money bag. And I don't remember too much about the other one, but that one like creeped me out the most. And I remember telling my mom about it, and she was real religious. She was a part of the apostolic faith. So she's like, yeah, that's just a spirit trying to steal our finances. So I'm like, as a child, I'm like, okay. So fast forward, my mom and my dad ended up getting divorced. We moved into the house with my grandma. And I was always scared in that house. Like, for some reason, I was always scared in that house. I never wanted to do nothing by myself. Being in the room alone terrified me. It would be so bad that, like, I would wake up in the middle of the night and I wouldn't want to go pee. Like, I would risk peeing on myself, even though I would get a whooping for it. I would risk peeing on myself because nothing in me wanted to walk in that hallway and walk into that bathroom by myself. My little sister was 2 years younger than me. I used to be like, Rim, can you come sit in the bathroom with me while I take a shower? Because I was too scared to shower by myself. This happened like all the way up to the age where I'm like 13. But by the time I turned a teenager, I just felt like I was too big to be that fucking scary. So I ignored the feeling, but it never went away. So I'm gonna take a break on that one because we're gonna actually have to come back to that. But I'm gonna insert a memory that my sister had that she told me about when we was kids, and I know she wasn't lying because she never gave me no story like this ever again. And I just don't believe that she made this shit up. And we went to Alabama. My great grandmother lived in Alabama. They had a farm, they had a house and a farm that they lived on, and the house was old as hell. And so we're in this house, and my grandmother, not my great grandmother, but my grandmother, my Nana, was with us. So it's the middle of the night, maybe around like 1 o'clock in the morning, right? My sister gets up to use the bathroom. She uses the She uses the bathroom, and my grandmother comes into the bathroom with her, and she's like, Nana, what are you doing? And Nana didn't say anything. And she's like, Nana, are you okay? And Nana just looked at her and didn't say anything. And then my sister gets up off the toilet and wipes, and like immediately follows my grandmother out of the bathroom to like see why she just randomly walked in and walked out. And when my sister walked out the bathroom, because it was like a master bathroom where the bathroom was inside the bedroom. When my sister walks out of the bathroom, my grandmother is laying in her bed sleeping. She was never awake. Alright, so then fast forward back to the house where I grew up in, and I was scared at my grandmother's house, right? So it's 2015. I'm 19 years old. I'm visiting the house that I grew up in that I was always scared of. I had moved out to go to college, and I came back to visit. And my sister came back to visit, and my mom came back to visit, and we were all in the house. So I'm sleeping in the room that I've slept in my entire life, the room that I've always been scared to be in, right? And I went to sleep with the TV on. I always went to sleep with the TV on because I was too scared to sleep in the dark there. And I always had the volume on because I was too scared to hear anything. Like, I wanted the volume on the TV to drown out any possible noise that any paranormal thing could have been making in that damn house. I did not want to hear it. I wake up to whistling. All I hear is, right? I just got the chills doing that shit. I'm never gonna do that again. And I wake up and I'm like, yo, why is the TV so loud? And then as I'm coming like to my consciousness, I realize that the TV is on, but the volume is all the way down. So I get up and I go into the room that my sister's sleeping in, and I'm like, Rem, why are you whistling? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Her light was on, so I assumed she was awake. And she sits up and she's like, what are you talking about? She was asleep, y'all. She wasn't even up. She was asleep. I woke her up walking into that room. She's like, I was not whistling. But it creeped her out. She was scared to be in that house too. She was just as scared as me. All the stuff I told y'all I used to do, she used to do too. So she comes in my room. She's like, yo, I'm about to lay in the bed with you because I don't like that. My mom can't sleep at night because she got PTSD. She hears and sees us up. So she comes in the room and she's like, hey, what are y'all doing up? Y'all, tell me why all I hear is the whistling tune that I just whistled to y'all coming from right next to me, like something is standing right next to me, right? And start whistling the tune right in front of me, my sister, and my mom. My sister immediately starts screaming. She started freaking out. She's like, Mommy! Mommy! Like, freaking the fuck out, y'all. My mom, like, a prayer warrior, so she don't play none of that. She start praying, telling the spirit that it gotta leave, rebuking it, like, sending it out the house, like, telling it that it has no authority here, no power here, all of that. And, y'all, like, I'm just standing there like, what just happened right in front of my face? Like, I wasn't tripping when I woke up and heard this at 3 o'clock in the morning the first time. Like, I really heard that, and he really did that right in front of my mom and my sister, bro. That's crazy. Fast forward, I end up joining this damn Hebrew Israelite cult, and something possessed my husband. My husband was very, very, very heavily possessed. That is a whole story time in itself. Like, the demon that had possessed him had started trying to attack me in my dreams. Like, it was to the point where I knew exactly what it looked like. Like, it would attack me every so often, every now and then. And he was heavily, heavily possessed. So we started having, like, paranormal activity in the crib. If me and him would get into an argument, like a real bad argument, you could hear something walking outside of our bedroom. Real shit. Sometimes I could see his eyes turn black, like pitch black, in the middle of an argument. That didn't happen until like the year before we got divorced, where it had got that far. And then sometimes, like, you could hear his voice change. Like, whatever was possessing him, you could hear it as he was speaking. Like, it wouldn't completely take over his voice, but you could hear it with his voice speaking with him. Like, that nigga was that far possessed. I've never in my life witnessed or seen nothing like that. So I'm gonna have to make a part 2, y'all, because I'm finna wrap it up. But part 2. Alright, I promised y'all a part 2, so I'm gonna give y'all the part 2. So the last thing I touched on was the fact that my ex-husband was possessed. That shit, like, you hear something like that, and I don't know what people expect or what people think when you say something like that, but I'm gonna give y'all an example of how I know my husband was possessed. I mean, I told y'all in the last video how that voice would start changing, and that shit did not start happening until, like, I want to say towards the end of 2022, going into 2023 is when that transition starting to happen, where whatever was dealing with him, you could start hearing it speak through him. If he was angry, or if he was doing some shit that he had no business doing. And when I tell y'all doing shit he had no business doing, it's in the police reports. This nigga is going to court for a reason, but I'm not even going to speak on that. Let me tell y'all how I used to get attacked in my dreams by this demon, right? And what would happen would be, all of a sudden, I'll be in a dream. And all of a sudden, I would be paralyzed. Like, the spirit, the demon, the entity, whatever the fuck we want to call that shit, would literally paralyze me to the point where I couldn't move. And I would be trying to call on Jesus. I would be trying to call on Yeshaya, which is supposed to translate to my Savior in Hebrew, which is what some Hebrew Israelites like to call Christ. And nothing would work. Like, I would just be in my dream and this shit would be torturing me, scaring the hell out of me. It would show me its face. I knew what it looked like. It would laugh at me and it would paralyze me, and then I would wake up and just be terrified. And I dealt with this for years. It wouldn't happen every night. It would happen every now and then. But what I started to notice was that it would happen when he was doing some of the worst bullshit. When he was actively being an evil bitch, that's when I would get attacked the most in my sleep. And I made the connection that it was the demon that was possessing him when one night, it was the end of my dream, and in my dream, I felt a hand be placed on my thigh by the demon in my dream. Like, the demon had touched my thigh, and I woke up, and my husband was asleep, but his hand was on my thigh like this. Now y'all could be like, oh, that's just coincidence. Like, you just felt the hand in your dream. Sorry, camera cut off, but some of y'all might be like, oh, that was just a coincidence. Like, you just felt the hand in your dream because he touched you. No, that was not a coincidence. Like, I immediately made the connection. Like, bro, like, I knew. I was like, oh shit, it's him. Okay, so then let me tell y'all how when I first met him, I started getting sleep paralysis at the big age of 19. Mind you, I had never ever had sleep paralysis before. I got sleep paralysis the first week after I met this man. And I was laying in my bed, laying on the side. See how I'm laying on the side like so? Laying in my bed, laying on the side. And I wake up and immediately, like, before I even come to my good senses, I think that my grandmother is at my door behind me. Like, I have no reason to believe that her 67-year-old self would climb 3 flights of stairs for no reason at 7 o'clock in the morning to be standing at the door of my room. But for some reason, I just woke up and assumed that my grandma was standing at the door looking at me. I felt something there. I felt some type of presence there. And I try to roll over to look and see who's at my door. Bitch, I can't move. Could not move. Then try to open my mouth to scream. Paralyzed, hoe. Absolutely paralyzed. Could not move. Y'all, I started praying in my head. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I was terrified, and I felt like whatever was at that door was still standing there watching me, and all I wanted to do for the life of me was turn the fuck around and see what was at that door looking at me. And I could not. And I started praying, and I finally, like, it released. Like, when I started praying, that's when it released me. But, child, that was the first time I had ever experienced something like that, and it was after I met him. And it happened one more time afterwards, and I was at my grandma's house, the house that I told y'all I was scared in. But that's when he came to visit with me, because he not from Chicago. I was born and raised in Chicago. He from Philly. He left Philly came to Chicago with me to visit my grandmother, and it happened to me in the house again when he came with me. Correlation? I believe so. Coincidence? I think the fuck not. Okay? And then, lastly, you know what? Never mind. Not even gonna go into that. So let me tell y'all, I'm going to connect. Okay, so remember how I was telling y'all about that thing that was in the house whistling in my grandma's house? That happened in 2015, right? Fast forward last year to 2023. I started listening to this podcast called Two Girls, One Ghost. And basically, the way that I'm telling y'all my story now, people write their story in, submit it, and then the girls read the story on their podcast. Or sometimes, like, they have a subject, like the subject could be poltergeist, the subject could be black-eyed children, the subject could be vampires, and then they do like a history of that particular thing and go into it. So I was listening to this shit so much all the time. And one day I'm sitting in my car and I'm listening to the podcast. And mind you, in the beginning of the podcast, they play a song. They play an intro song. And then after the intro song, there's no music. It's just them talking for like another hour or so. So I'm listening to them talk about the subject, and I hear music playing in the background. And I'm like, that's different. Like, when they start playing music in the background. And I noticed the music, the tune that I hear is y'all, that's the same tune that was being whistled in my old room at my grandma's house that I used to be scared in. I'm in utter disbelief. I'm like, there's no fucking way. So I go to turn the volume up so I can hear it a little bit more. Why, as soon as I turn that volume up so I can hear that song, so I can hear whatever music is playing in the background, no music. No music. So I'm like, all right, maybe it was just a quick thing. Like, maybe they just played it for a little bit for like a spooky effect. And I missed it. So I go to rewind it by 10 seconds. Nothing. Rewind it by 15 seconds. Nothing. I'm like, oh, hell no. Now the song was just completely going in the background. And I know for a fact I just heard it playing. And now there's no music. Oh, no. That was crazy to me. So I'm like, I don't want to listen to it no more. I don't want to listen to the podcast anymore. At this point, I'm completely creeped out. I'm turning this shit off, right? So tell me why. A week later, literally 7 days after that, I'm driving in my car. I'm not listening to the podcast. I'm just playing music in my car pretty loudly at that. And right next to me, like, it's coming from the passenger seat, I hear whistling. I hear whistling coming from the passenger seat right next to me, y'all. And I turned the music off, and I didn't hear anything after that. Now, that was last year. In like maybe last October. And I haven't had any incidents like with the whistling or with that again. But mind you, like I said, it first happened in 2015. Last year was 2023. That's almost 10 years where there was nothing going on, and then all of a sudden something started happening again. So I don't know. If anything else happens, I will update y'all. But yeah.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So about a week or so ago, I experienced something that just confirmed my beliefs in the supernatural and the paranormal. It wasn't scary. Some of these things, majority of these things are not scary for me, but this one was very affirming or confirming to me. I was at my grandmother's house. She was on hospice. And I was holding her hand, leaning on the side of the bed, talking to her, telling her how much I loved her and stuff. And I felt something approach me on my right side. I went to lean, and I glanced over, and I could see khaki pants and a white button-up shirt. When I went to turn completely around, there was nobody there. My aunt, who was on the other side of the bed, leaning on a bed rail, looked at me, and she asks me, "What did you see?" And I told her, "What?" And she says, because I felt it. I told her, well, I saw khaki pants and a white button-up shirt, but there wasn't anybody there. I was just moving to let them through. If they were to come talk to grandma or see grandma, I was, being courteous. So I went home. I was talking to my parents on the phone, and I told them what I had seen. And my dad was listening, and he tells me, oh, that sounds like my Uncle Joe. He's already passed. And I told him, what do you mean it sounds like Uncle Joe? And he told me, well, he used to wear slacks and button-up shirts all the time. He cared a lot about his appearance. He was always wearing slacks, button-up shirts, Stacey Adams. He always had everything that he needed. Like, he was well-groomed, well-maintained. He said almost like cholo style or zoot suits or whatever, He was always just well-dressed. So I went back to my grandmother's house, and I was, again, by the bedside, and my other aunt walks in and she tells me, and she's rubbing my shoulders, and she tells me, your dad told me that you saw my Uncle Joe. And I looked at her, and I didn't know that my dad had shared anything. I said, well, apparently, I was just explaining to my parents what I saw, and she asked me what I saw, and I told her khaki pants and a white button-up shirt, and then she proceeds to tell me that he always wore slacks and button-up shirts, but his favorite thing to wear was khaki and white. I told her I didn't get to see above the shoulders. I didn't get to see a face. I didn't get to see anything like that, just the body. And she tells me, can I tell you something? And I told her, go ahead. Apparently, when my grandmother was being discharged on hospice, there was a lady, I don't know if it was somebody that was rooming because, they had 2 patients to a room, or if it was somebody in the hallway, but somebody grabbed her hand and told her, her brother is waiting for her at home. And my aunt looked back and she said, excuse me? Her brother is waiting for her at home. They brought my grandma home. I'm sitting next to her bed. I feel something. I lean. I see something. Then there's nothing there. Side note, my mom, when I told her about what I had seen, she says to me, think the location through. And I told her, what are you talking about? So she reminded me of the layout of the room. The layout of the room was simple. It's a small room. Where I was sitting, the concentrator, the oxygen concentrator that my grandmother was using, was directly up against my chair. And behind me was her bedside table. Nothing else but there. Absolutely nothing. So for me to see somebody, pants and a torso, standing in that area was not possible, because there was no room for anybody to walk behind me or to the side of me to see my grandmother. So yeah, I guess I saw my great uncle Joe, who was watching over his sister, waiting for her. So that was really made me an even bigger believer. I've had tons of supernatural things happen. I have tons of dreams, loved ones that have passed talking to me through dreams. I've seen things, I've experienced things. So if there's anything else you want to know, if you want to hear another story, feel free to comment, or you can send me a message. And even if you have one that you want to share, you want to go live together, then we can go live together, talk about it, share your experiences. I can share some of mine. So I hope y'all have a good night.
So I see that many of y'all enjoyed my first story time, so I got another good one for you. So this story time is about how I used to work at a prestigious golf resort along the Appalachian Trail, and how I let my coworkers talk me into going to a church that once used to harbor and be a safe haven for slaves. So back in 2009, 2010, I was in culinary school. Shout out Le Cordon Bleu College of Culinary Arts, Atlanta. I don't know about like traditional colleges, but with culinary school, in order to graduate, you have to complete a 3-month externship of your finding and your choosing. My best friend and I were originally scheduled to attend the Biltmore Estates here in North Carolina, but plans ended up falling through and I ended up losing my externship. So my chef at school, who was also my mentor, he told me how he knew of a place in Virginia that he had connections with and he could get me in there. So because he knew the executive chef there personally, I was able to bypass the interview process and a lot of that stuff before arriving there. So me being like kind of young and dumb, I really didn't look into the company and look up their like background history. So maybe a week or two before I was supposed to leave for my externship, I don't remember if I looked this up myself or if somebody sent this to me, but I remember like looking at a link to a news article because this place was once featured on America's Most Wanted, and the incident had happened like literally months before I was supposed to start my externship. What had me concerned was that the incident actually happened in the kitchen that I was supposed to be working in. So we made the decision to either stick it out at culinary school and work in their restaurant or brave it out and just go on the externship. And I chose the externship. So this golf resort sits along the Allegheny Mountains within the Appalachian Trail. And when I say this place is beautiful, this place is so beautiful. Like, it sits at the top of a mountain, one way up, one way down. Fall time, it is gorgeous. I fell in love with this place the minute that I saw it. Because this resort and area is so old and dated, there was a lot of spiritual activity and paranormal activity that I witnessed here, but that's another story time. So 2 months into my externship, around October, gearing towards Halloween, one of the locals who also worked with us had asked if myself and 2 other young ladies were willing to go out venturing after dark. Mistake number 1. Not having many friends here yet, and like I said before, this place sat at the top of a mountain. There was one way up, one way down. The closest local spot was like 4 hours away. So me developing friendships here, it was important to me. So of course, I say yes, I'm down for it. Let's go. So the night of, when we arrived there, there's this drive path here, directly in the middle, and along it, there's like tree line. And behind the tree line, there is a big silhouette building, which I assume was the church. For whatever reason, the young man decided to park at the end of the gravel pathway instead of us driving up, and we get out of his truck with one flashlight and my digital camera, and we start to make our way up this path towards the church. So now we're finally up this path. It maybe took like 2-3 minutes to walk up it, and we're facing now the tree line, and I can see the silhouette of the church in the background. Us not really thinking much of it, me and the 2 other girls, we're out here joking and playing because I honestly didn't believe it. I didn't think there was nothing more to it. I just assumed it was a church and he was just BSing us, trying to scare us. So as we're joking and laughing, out of nowhere, I start to hear what sounded like humming. And it wasn't your traditional humming like a It really sounded like somebody was out there singing Negro spirituals. When I say it was slow, it was deep, it was heartfelt, like I felt it in my spirit. So I stopped the group and I'm like, do y'all hear that? I know I hear somebody humming. Do y'all not hear somebody humming out here? So the group stops talking and we're now looking at the church, and I'm starting to get freaked out. Out of nowhere, I kid you not, I started to see silhouettes form around the church. And it wasn't like people were just popping up like all over. It was just literal bodies just starting to appear. And they all just stood there, non-moving, and I could still hear the humming. So this young man starts hauling ass down this hill, and we are like just trying our hardest to like keep up behind him because he's the only one with the flashlight. So we make it to his truck, and for whatever stupid reason, we decide to ride up the path in his truck back up to the church. So now we're sitting in front of the church, and I remember that I have my digital camera on me, and he takes the camera and he starts to take pictures of the church. So as we're looking back at the pictures, you can literally see shadow bodies in my camera. I immediately deleted it out my camera because I know better, and I didn't want that attached to me. So after we leave there, he takes us to another open field that he say there was like a war fought there, and we take pictures of that too. And in the pictures, you can see like what looks like somebody was running across the field in my pictures. But at that place, I didn't give a damn about. I was still concerned about what I had just saw back at this church. When I tell y'all, from the day we went to that church to my final day at that externship, whoever was out there at that church up in them woods, they haunted my ass, haunted me bad. I always have vivid nightmares because I've always been spiritually attuned since I was a little girl, but these dreams were different. Like, they were really different. My dreams were no longer just me exploring in my dreams or whatever. My dreams became me working at this place and them working in here with me or being in this space with me. For example, I had one dream that I was working on the line in the kitchen, and there was a man that was opposite on the line, and no matter where I would go, I would see him, and he was always staring at me. And I don't know if you ever seen the movie Smile, that really nasty sinister smile, like it was that. And he had his like head kind of tilted, his eyes up, and it was like the most grimacing smile I've ever seen in my life. So rewind back, the externship that I had, they had 2 different buildings that housed the interns, and I stayed at one further down, way past where civilization was. With the room I had, it was like an old hotel, I guess, and they just converted them to dorms. So I had a room here, there was another room on this side, and connecting us was a bathroom. Both sides could access it. Because no one lived in the room connected to mine, I always kept that door locked because it would terrify me, because there was already not a lot of people living in these like old abandoned like hotel housing unit. So I never knew what I was going to walk into coming into that bathroom. That door was always locked. After discovering this church, one day I wake up in the morning. Mind you, I had to be at work at 5 o'clock. And because of how this place was set up so early in the morning, a lot of times I would walk to work in the dark because I really enjoyed being outside in nature. And I would always see like a lot of wild animals. I came across bears, bobcats, everything. I loved it. This morning in particular, I just so happened to get up and go in the bathroom and start getting myself prepared. And what the hell did I discover? The freaking door next door to the connecting bathroom was unlocked and open. There was nobody in there but me. Like for part 2.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Hey, yeah. So, right after my husband and I got married, his grandfather passed away. And we ended up inheriting a property he owned. And it happened to be the house that my husband grew up in. So we had to do a ton of renovations on this house because it was just not in the best condition. It needed pretty much all new floors, subflooring, all this kind of stuff. So we more or less gutted it and completely redid it from bottom to top. And it ended up being absolutely beautiful. So we did end up moving in, and it was awesome. So one day it was a weekend, and we were cleaning up around the house. We had just cleaned the entire house. I was just finishing up some sweeping because we had a German Shepherd at the time. And if you own a German Shepherd, you know that they constantly are shedding, especially in the spring. So we had just vacuumed and swept the floors, and we came back out and there was just hair everywhere again. So my husband sat down to play a video game, and I went back and got the broom. That way I could sweep up some of her hair. So I was sweeping up some of her hair, and went and put the broom back and came back to where my husband was sitting, and I saw a pile of blue sand. And I was like, babe, did you move the picture? So we have this picture that has sand in it from when we got married, when we did our sand ceremony. Let me see if I can get a picture real quick. This is the picture, and this was sitting on a shelf, actually, this shelf. But it was sitting up against the wall, and there was blue sand just all over the floor. And I was like, babe, why did you move this? I just slept. Why would you do that? And he was like, what are you talking about? I didn't move. And I said, there is blue sand in a pile back here. What? Why did you move it? And he goes, I have no clue what you're talking about. I don't know. What, blue sand? What? So he got up and went around the back side of where the sofa was and looked, and lo and behold, the blue sand that is in the frame was in a pile on the floor. So we were like, okay. So I swept it up and went back about my business and came back again about 5-10 minutes later, and it's back. The sand's back on the floor. And I look at him again and I said, okay, you're messing with me now. Like, really? How did this happen? And he goes, what are you talking about? And I said, why is there sand on the floor again? And he got up and looked, and there was sand, blue sand, on the floor again. And he was like, I swear I haven't moved. I've been sitting here playing my game the whole time, and I have not touched that frame. It is in the same spot it was earlier. So we cleaned it up, and we actually just kind of rolled on with the rest of our day, didn't really think about it. And we talked to his grandmother later that night, and she was like, oh yeah, it's your papa's birthday today. And we both looked at each other and we were like, oh my God, it's his birthday. And he was trying to tell us that he was there and try to make us remember it was his birthday. So every year in March, we start kind of laughing because that story was wild. And it never happened again after that.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely...
This one's a good one. So we're in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains visiting my grandparents. If you know anything about that mountain range. If you don't know, all you gotta do is search mimic. They'll come up. So speaking of mimics, my mom and I are visiting my grandparents, and my aunt and my cousin live with them as well. While we were staying there, we were staying in the basement, which is also where my aunt's room is, and then there's a bathroom. And then my grandparents' room and office is upstairs, and I think my cousin's is too. So I wake up, go to the bathroom, I'm walking past my aunt's room, and I see my grandpa, and I say, hi, Grandpa, wearing jeans and a flannel, like, looks completely normal. He doesn't say anything back to me, which doesn't surprise me because he's hard of hearing, so it wouldn't be shocking that I would say hi and he wouldn't say hi back. I go upstairs, and he walks in from the other side of the house, and I was like, were you downstairs earlier this morning? And he's like, no, not at all. I go back and forth with him a little bit because I'm like, maybe he went down there and he just doesn't remember. It literally got to the point where my mom was like, Anna, stop. He has not been down there. When I tell you I did not speak until we got literally all packed up out of the house. We were 45 minutes away in the car, and that's when I said, do you know if their house is haunted? So my mom had me call my aunt who lives there. She also sees ghosts like regularly, talks to them like the whole nine. So if it was haunted, she would know. So I text her and I told her, like, is it haunted? She's like, well, what did you see? So I explained the whole thing to her. She sends me screenshots of my cousin's friend from like 4 months in, like, before this happened, sending her a detailed description of the exact ghost I saw wearing the same outfit. And okay, that scared the hell out of me because that was the most human ghost that I've ever seen in my life. Like, it had feet. It had clothes. Like, it looked like a person. And it wasn't until I got on this lovely app that I learned about mimics, and it, like, that's what I feel like it probably was. It also makes me wonder though, like, Okay, so if you become a ghost, can you choose an outfit and then are you in that outfit forever? Or can you change outfits? Because why was he wearing a flannel? And jeans. Like jeans is the selection for your eternal outfit. That I wouldn't do that.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So probably around 6 or 7 years ago, my ex and I, we lived in Indiana, and we were looking for a house to rent because we were tired of apartments. And so we went through this property management company, and they showed us all of their properties. And on the tour of the last property, I was like, hey, I don't think this is going to work out. Like, I don't like any of your shit. And she was like, well, there is one more house if you really want to see it. And she said it exactly like that. And so I'm like, yeah, I want to see it. Is it within my budget? Like, does it have the right amount of rooms? Nothing scares me. I don't care. And so she's like, yeah, bet. I'll show it to you. I just don't like to be there. I'm like, doesn't bother me none. Let's go. So we went. And the funny thing is, it was literally a block away from the house that we had told her was like the top of our list, our main, like our number one pick. So it was very much so what we wanted within the area. It was 3-bedroom, 2 full baths, a detached garage, full fenced in backyard next to a park. It was everything we wanted. So we get there, we tour it, and I'm like, yeah, this is the one, babe. Like, can I put in my application today? I need it. And she's like, yeah, of course. Do you not want to see the basement, though? And I'm like, I guess. Like, it's not really high on my priority list, but yeah, I'll see the basement. And so she's like, okay, but I'm not going down there with you. I'm like, I don't care. So I start walking down there with my ex, and she yells down the stairs, and she's like, don't look into the mirror. And I'm like, what mirror? And she's like, you'll know. So I was like, okay, babes. And we get to the bottom of the stairs, and she was right. We did know. As soon as I get to the bottom of the stairs, you look up, and there is this support beam that seems like it would be for the house to just hold it up or whatever. And there is a medicine cabinet that is just nailed just shittily to the support beam. And it's got a mirror on the outside of it, and it like opens and closes. It should be in a bathroom, but it's just nailed to this one just stick in the middle of the basement. I look into it, and I'm just smiling back at myself, and I'm like, perfect, we'll take it. And we did. We moved right in, we cleaned everything up, and everything was totally fine. But within the first 2 weeks, we start finding a bunch of toys in the house. And like I mentioned, we cleaned it up. We took everything out of there. There was nothing in that home except for our stuff. We cleaned it. But I would find like a detached baby doll head, detached from the body, just sitting in the living room at 2 a.m. when I came home from work. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And like throughout the time I lived there, like the basement got backed up with just black water. It was just full of black water. Just not even sewage water, just black water. There was so many things that happened in that house, but mostly the children's stuff was showing up everywhere. Toys would show up everywhere. There was crayon writing on the wall that wasn't there when we moved in because we scrubbed the walls. And it would be like blue crayon just writing all over our wall, or barrettes, or toys. And I kept every single toy we found. We would just put them in the kitchen cabinet. I was like, I wasn't getting rid of them. I'm not getting no bad juju on me. And anyway, we threw a party about 2 months into moving in there, and this neighbor came to our party because we invited everybody, and she's sitting there, and she's like, it's been a while since anyone moved in here. And I was like, yeah, I thought it was weird. It's a really nice house. She's like, yeah. Did they tell you what happened here? And I'm like, no. What the fuck are you talking about? She's like, oh, nothing. But she ended up telling me that a child, because we lived right next to a park, climbed our fence before we lived there, obviously. And there used to be a pool in the backyard, and then he hopped into the pool. He drowned. There was no saving him. So he died on the property. They removed the pool, and nobody moved in there since, except for us. It's like, that explains all the children's things. But we stayed there for several more years. But it was a lot of like, I don't know, a lot of the things that happened there, I feel like were pranks that a child would play. I'm like, that makes sense. You're cool to stay here, bud. I don't mind.